Everyone loves Christmas-themed movies, everyone loves horror movies, but there's something about Christmas horror movies that is just like a match made in heaven. But why? Every year in the lead up to the Halloween festive period, I always say to myself, Halloween's the greatest time of the year. And it generally is the greatest time of the year, especially for horror fans. But there's also something about the lead up to Christmas that's maybe even better. I think with me, I've got two young kids, so the lead up to Christmas has now become better than the lead up to Halloween. It's just the way I am. I loved Christmas growing up and I still love Christmas to this day, but having kids, it makes you feel like a kid again. So when you look at horror in terms of the themes that you get in those horror films, like Halloween themed horror films and Christmas themed horror films, I do like Halloween themed horror films better than Christmas themed horror films. But there's something about the Christmas festive period that I just love. So when you mix those two together, it's a match made in heaven. But why does Christmas make the perfect setting for a horror film? Well, first of all, when you have characters like Santa Claus in these horror movies, if Santa Claus is the main bad guy, there's something about that that's quite scary if you're watching it as a kid, but there's something satisfying about it if you're watching it as an adult, knowing that the very person that's supposed to bring kids cheer and joy and presents is the one that's after them and killing them all. There's something horrible about that, but something you really want to see in a horror film. As a photographer myself, another point that I like to see is contrast in colours, and there's nothing more contrasting in a horror film than white and red put together. When you've got all that snow setting and then people are dying in the snow, you see the blood spatter all over the white snow. There's something satisfying about that and quite gruesome and eerie about it as well. Just seeing all the blood all over the place. I know you can see blood on a white wall in a film that's set in the summer, but something more crispy and white about it when you see that red on white in a Christmas horror film. I think when it comes to the settings of Christmas horror films, it's great as well. I love my isolation horror movies, as you know. And if you have, and we do have, a lot of Christmas movies that are set on the road where people's cars are being abandoned and they're stuck in the middle of nowhere, or there's films where they go to a cottage in the middle of nowhere and they're hunted down by either a demonic force or a crazed killer, and they're stuck in this one area. You tend to see that in a lot of Christmas horror movies, and there is some Christmas-themed movies that are not horror that have great elements that could be used in horror films. If only they use some of that and put it into the Christmas horror, it'd be amazing. I know that I touched on the red on the white, but when you see Christmas lights around a horror film and they're utilised perfectly within horror, I think one horror film that sticks out to me where the Christmas lights and the colours of Christmas works perfectly is a film called Christmas Bloody Christmas that came out in 2022. They utilised the greens, the reds, the blues, the oranges, the yellows. They utilised them perfectly within all the scenes that were in the movie. So that's another thing that makes it perfect, having those Christmas-themed horror movies. I would say that lastly, there's something about the awkward theme of being joyful at Christmas. I know that I touched on Santa Claus killing people in these horror films, which you don't know how to feel about, but the overall feel of the Christmas period that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I feel great watching Christmas movies. I feel great during the Christmas period if everyone's having a good time. But when you're watching a Christmas-themed horror film, you feel Christmassy. I don't know how you feel, guys, but I feel Christmassy watching a Christmas-themed horror movie. But then when people start dying, I start to feel that dread thinking, oh, I shouldn't feel as joyful as I do when I'm watching these horror films, but I do. And I think that's the weird thing about these Christmas-themed horror movies is you don't really know how to feel by the end of the movie. Obviously, some horror films differ from theme to theme, but when it comes to the Christmas horror setting, it's just something that feels so eerie and satisfying. So what are your thoughts on that, guys? Do you think that Christmas horror movies make the perfect setting for a horror movie in general? And if they do, what kind of setting do you like to see in a Christmas horror movie? As always, guys, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the